Hey, morning, folks. It's Richard Burcher here with the Eclipse Foundation. Thanks for tuning in on for this is our third Hangout series. So today I want to give a quick talk about community, really about growing your community. And so this is just a sort of free flow of ideas and that it's really how can you engage more individuals, help grow your project, and it's sort of it becomes a real cycle. People engage with your project in whatever capacity, advocate for your project, become passionate about it, and that helps further grow your community. Really, so it's really an organic, bottoms-up approach rather than a top-down, one-way feed. Right? It's really about engaging community, and you really think like, what is community? That's probably the foremost part, right? And really, I think for myself, I think a community. I think it's really about people come together over a shared interest, something that you're really passionate about. There's a reason that you're interested in it. There's a reason why you're giving up some of your free time to be involved with this community. Be that the people, the project means something to you. You're passionate about it, and you really just want to get in there and contribute. So, overall, for whatever capacity people are working in your community, they're all bound by the shared values and ideals and where the project is going to be involved, and that's really important. And then foremost, because it's all volunteer, it's all on your own time for the most part. You think about people that they're contributing code or helping write documentation all around the world that you might be touching base with your project. For the most part, they're unpaid. So having for them to have a reason to be involved and really feel that they own this is quite key. So you're really working around shared ideas, and I think that's what the key thing is figuring out who your community is. Who do you want your community to be? Who is your community right now? Who's involved with the community? Take a little bit of time to figure that out. And the community side, I think, is sort of irrelevant. It's really not about numbers, or we have 5,000 followers on Facebook, or it's we have to grow by 200 retweets. I think those metrics are important because they tell you that if you're trying new things, what's working, what's not working. But I think it's really more about the quality and the engagement of the community, not so much the size, because the size can be sort of misleading, right? So it's important to track, but I don't think it's the end all be all to start with, right? So really, I think you start with the community is a place for everyone, but they want to be around your project. There's a spot for everyone. So you think about many of the projects that we have here. And when I talk to people, a lot of people think, well, conference now. They're like, well, listen, I'm interested. This is really neat, but I'm not a big developer. I'm here because I'm interested in adopting the technology. I want to learn more about it, and I think that's great. I think that's awesome because there's a role for everyone. So code is important. That's really important, but so is all the other people in your community around that. People that help find bugs, that you didn't find or missed perhaps. Filing bugs is really important. Giving feedback, people writing documentation, people translating into different languages. These are skills that don't require coding. People organizing events, people evangelizing for your product, both as outside of their employment and perhaps inside their employment where they work. To evangelize and why someone should look at your code, right? Because again, when I come back down to it's community is a two-way dialogue. It's really about you talking to them and listening to them coming back instead of the one-way marketing message that a lot of us are familiar with. It's two-way, and so when you engage with these individuals and you hear their feedback and they're evangelizing for you or they're advocating for your project, that word of mouth is so important for your project, because other people will take someone else's word more than I don't say an online ad or something they read. So personal endorsement is really important, especially if you're in the developer community. It's something that I really see is that if someone says, hey, this is a really neat piece of code, I love the documentation, the API is clean, there seems to be a good buzz around it, they get back to me right away. Developers march with their feet, and and likewise the rest of us do too. You know, if you're a first timer in whatever the community is that you're involved with, you know, and you have questions about it, there's nothing like getting that quick email back or that message post to someone on the message board says, hey, this is really, you know, this is where you should go look at the FAQs. Here's some things you might not have thought about. You know, just kind of calling them with love and kindness because they've showed up and are interested in participating in your project or asking questions about it. That's invaluable, that first point of contact. So I think that's something that is really key for successful projects. They know how to do this well. I mean, granted, you can't reply to everyone's comments, and it's difficult, you know, if you're a small team. But I think the step is that you start off with that, and you eventually get to the point where the community becomes self-sufficient enough where people inside the community, you know, are helping directly engage with others in the community, answering their questions and growing that sense of belonging, and not only further it makes people want to participate. So, you know, in this great day and age of the internet, you know, so much of your community is virtually distributed. So, you know, we would touch base on mailing lists, Facebook, Twitter, any type of social media, any IRC, whatever we touch virtually. So geography doesn't matter anymore, and that's really interesting because, you know, you can talk to folks in Japan, Alaska, you know, South America, can all be involved in building a great project that would never happen without this distribution, and that's great. The other thing I think that for projects to consider is, you know, events, is social events, whether that be, you know, one large event a year if you're part of a large group organization where, you know, the open source folks get together at different conferences, or it can be, you know, local meetups. I think those are really powerful in terms of, you know, local organizations that are involved in the project. You know, get to have a meetup. You know, if there's 3 or 4 committers or people are involved in the project in a small area, they throw a meetup or a hack day or a hack fest and get together. You know, those sort of in-person relationships are really important. You know, in my mind, it's not so much about you know, about the code or the project at that point. It's more about just, you know, like the relationships of shaking someone's hand or having a quick chat over a beer or a tea, and just really, you know, having a really good vibe around the community that people really want to show up and participate in, and you take that back on, you know, to the online world. So, having said all this, there's really no magic answer. I think there's a lot of time and patience to grow anything. I think if you know this well, if you're in the blogging space or trying to fire up a meetup, you know, I've got one locally that I've started probably 9 months ago for OpenStreetMap. You know, it's a personal example, and, you know, there's, you know, 5, 6, 7 people depending on the task, and it can take a lot of patience. But, you know, you just got to kind of look at the longer term and say, you know, like, I want to really start this community. I want to help grow this community. So it's going to take time. You know, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be any one solution. It's really going to be about reaching out and trying to engage with other like-minded individuals. It's going to be about answering people's questions. It's going to be about creating content, and I think content is key. You think of your favorite websites that you visit on a daily basis. If they don't have daily content, then they might not be on that list next week. And I think the same goes for community. So content, in my mind, is focused on particular different groups. So if you're, you know, a developer, in our case, you know, committer, contributor, and this is your first time touching the project, I think, you know, a quick getting started guide, so you can, you know, fire the project up, kick the tires a bit. What's it look like? You know, how does it interact? Is it easy for me to actually download and start up with very little frustration that I can actually try a quick, you know, hello world type project to see how it works? That's awesome, right? Like, reduce the friction to get onto my system in front of me to start playing with the bits and bytes. I'm a user, the same sort of thing. It should be, you know, quick to download, easy to set up. I should be able to see some real quick output, no matter how simple it is, so I feel success. And then I can kind of build on that I'm familiar now with it. Likewise, you know, if you're someone new that said, I found a bug. I'm using this piece of software and I found a bug. How easy is it for them to find where to submit the bug? How to actually create the bug? You look at Bugzilla or any other type of bug tracking system, and for new users that aren't technical, it can be a bit daunting. What's the right component, category? How do I do it? What should I write? Am I going to be overly judged because it's in the open? So, making it very, very easy, reducing the friction. Same as someone to adopt your technology. Yes, the software has to, be easy to set up and get going on and have all the supporting components around it, but it also needs to have good documentation, right? A user guide, a developer guide, perhaps some use cases. So just really reducing the friction so people can get going. And then if they have questions, coming to a clean website, let this really laid out well, get them where they want to go. And I think that's further moves off to the if they touch base with the project, if the project is responsive, transparent, open, accepting. I think these are sort of very open source sort of fundamentals, right? That we welcome everyone that shows up. We want everyone to participate. We want everyone to have equal footing. There's respect and professionalism is there. This only helps reinforce this is a great place to be, that someone has shown up at your door and this is the place they want to be. Even if they're just getting their feet wet, they know they want to be here. And I think that's so key to growing all the facets of the community. So we talk about showing up. Where you have to think about the shared space and where does all this interaction happen. And in today's very fragmented social media world, this can happen on a lot of levels. So I think it's sort of up to the project to sort of look at, where are people sort of chatting right now? What's appropriate for your project? And it could be depending on how you categorize or segment the users up. Do you find that most of your support questions are sort of coming through a Facebook page that you have? People are saying, I found this interesting bug, or I've got some comments or some feedback. For developers, are they more comfortable on IRC or on mailing lists where everyone can see that? And I think that's kind of key. Like, as much as we have the social media aspect, I think that's great, but I think it's also very important too that everyone can actually see with full transparency what's happening with the project. Forums are a great place. So you really got to think about that, and how do you connect these? How do you connect these different folks together, right? And so much of it's trial and error, right? Like, it might make sense, that you try Facebook, or that you tried you try Twitter, or you try to maybe start doing some hangouts like we're doing here as a way to sort of engage, and don't be afraid to try. I think that's really the key is put it out there, see what your community says, see what kind of feedback you get. Keep in mind that, at least in my experience, I found on mailing lists that there's lots of people that are actually watching and monitoring, but there's not the ratio to people actually participating in active comments is lower. So so keep that in mind. Just because no one's actually commenting doesn't mean they aren't participating. It's just, I think you have to try to find a way to reach out to them. In some cases that might just be try to touch base with personal email, or actually a lot of things too is trying to find the advocates, the early adopters that are really passionate about your project. It's really engaging with them, because I think they can be a real foot into word of mouth, getting them on board to help promote, evangelize your project. Can be a real benefit, right? So I would really seek those out. Those people that are passionate, those people that show up or are already blogging about your project. You certainly need to really touch base with them and see what they're saying. If you're not blogging, you definitely should. Everyone's got a blog today, and it's a great place that people can come back to. Right, it should be permalinked. People come back to it. They can go back through, who the project's going, where the project's coming. So blog content, sometimes it can be a little difficult to come up with topics to talk about. So perhaps it's a mix of here's some of the technical things that we're doing. We have an upcoming release here that we're going to release. Maybe you're doing your 1.0, or it could be your 10.0. What are some of the real things that you've solved? That your community might find interesting. If you're a user, why would they want to use this? So you could focus on some of the technical aspects. You can focus on some use cases. How people use the technology. Maybe an interview with someone in the community. And in some cases, I think when to talk about interviews or reaching out to other people, sometimes it's really good to reach out to people that are not so prominent in the community. A first-time user, for instance, getting their insight, and posting it on a blog, and not being worried about putting it out there. Maybe if they had some critical or maybe negative comments, that's excellent. You want to hear that back. And that's a great way to post that out too, so that newcomers feel they're engaged when they look at this blog and say, hey, they listen to this person. So it's really, again, I think listening is the key. Seeking out different voices, different opinions, different aspects of it can really help you get going. Like, it's so different than you look at a lot of other startups that are using A/B testing, what works, what doesn't. They want the faster you get to failure to some degree, the quicker you move on to success. And I think that's true too, right? What works, what doesn't work, and just iterate on that. But at the end of the day, nothing replaces being authentic. Nothing replaces that. If you care about your community, if you care about your project, that comes out. You can't outsource that. You can't buy it. You can't put an app on it. If people feel that you're not into your community, that you're really not caring, listening to them, they'll walk. They will walk to some other project that reaches out and shows them love, because that's really what all projects are competing against today. Is feed. Be that developer, be it adopters, committers, contributors, whoever. It's about feed. And so if people show up at your door, they need to feel loved. They need to feel that this is the place to be, that they want to build around. So authenticity and being genuine is so key today, because I just reading actually this morning where people were, I forget the individual's name, but they were talking about community as a platform. It's no longer, here's our message, or here's, some social media. It's really a platform for engagement. And I think that cannot be any more true than it is today. So really, I think in summary, it's really about, reaching out to people that want to talk to you, being genuine, really being passionate, finding those early adopters, for your project, or people that have been in the community for a while, reaching out and seeing, what are they doing, how can you help support them. It's really building great content, making it easy for individuals to get started in whatever capacity for your project. Think about that, about how you can have different facets of your community be engaged. And it's not always about code. So I'd really keep that in mind. Code's important, but it's not the only thing. Experiment. No different than when you write code. Some stuff passes, some stuff doesn't. Some stuff's a great idea. Maybe five things you try don't work, and then all of a sudden you find that one that really does. So that's really, I think, what you have to do here too. I think it's creating a really transparent place for people to communicate, and just getting together socially where you can, be that small groups, or catching up at large conferences, presenting at large conferences. So really try to make the effort for that physical space. And just remember, it's two-way. It's two-way. It's two-way conversation between you and everyone else. So with that, I'm gonna say I think I've chatted enough here, actually. So I see I've got 2 viewers. Hey, that's awesome. We're working on this. So I'm gonna open it up here and see if there's any questions in the group chat here. So fire away, folks out there, and I'll give it a couple minutes here. So last call for questions out there. You know, if you're watching this, if you got two folks right now watching this, if you have questions right now, post them in the chat. And if you catch up with us later on the Eclipse Foundation YouTube website, send the questions to emo@eclipse.com. You can find me on Twitter at Richard Burcher. So I'd love to chat with you. I'd love to hear your opinions on this. This is sort of our outreach we're doing every 2 weeks. So if you have any ideas, I do promise in the next upcoming Hangout that we will have a few other folks besides myself and Wayne chatting, because I really want to reach out to the community and get you involved. So this is the last call for questions. All right, folks. Well, it's been great chatting, and I really look forward to your feedback on this. Above all, it's just about communication, just chit-chatting and just engaging genuinely with people. So on that note, you folks have a great weekend, and we'll catch up soon. Anyways, all right, thanks a lot.